in the boardroom around our equity work. And so I'll read it this time, and we'll have on a rotating basis, board members read off the statement to ensure that we're entering into our meetings with the right frame of focus and centering our students and their education. So the statement is that each student has access to the resources and educational rigor they need at the right moment in their education, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, ability, language, family background, or family income.
What's that?
I think we need, I think that's the board meeting agenda. I think we want to be on the board workshop.
Oh, do we?
Okay, thank you for that.
Several meetings today.
Appreciate that. I've got the wrong agenda. Just give me a moment here. Okay. Well, we can do that twice. There's no problem in doing it multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start off with our board workshop, and we're going to be interviewing and voting to fill the vacant board seat. First, before we proceed with the interviews, we'll cover process, which has been distributed to all board members, but I'll cover it briefly and we can answer any questions. We will start with the overview, which we're doing now from 5 to 5:15. At 5:15, Nicole Vafadari will interview. At 5:30, we will interview John Grummel. The interviews are to be conducted in open session, and there is a list of standard questions that we will each ask. I'll start with question 1, and then we'll do clockwise. There are 6 questions, so 1 for each board member. We should have enough time to ask additional questions, but we'll allow that once we move through these standard questions, and every board member is welcome and encouraged to ask any questions that you may have. After the interviews, we will deliberate in open session unless there are some extenuating circumstances that would necessitate closed conversation. I have not been notified that there are any circumstances that would require that, so we will be deliberating in open session. After we discuss the candidates, we will then take a vote to appoint the new member. The way that we are going to be proceeding with voting is that you have all been provided with a ballot. You will write your name down and then the candidate that you were voting for, and then I will read out the tally. In the case of a tie, we will re-vote, and we'll just proceed with that same process until we have a majority vote to appoint a candidate. I think that covers most of the guidelines. Are there any questions or anything I missed, Meredith?
No, I think that sounds good. I have extra ballots, but I'm feeling very optimistic that we are going to be through this without ties. We'll see. Not good.
Excellent. Any questions from the board? Otherwise, we've got some time before our first interview.
Yeah, so we want to make sure, I think, is that Nicole? Come on in.
Welcome.
Come on down, Nicole.
Agenda summary. Where do we want the minutes, or is that attached in a different?
Either side.
So here, that's in the other agenda. Okay, that's what I was.
Hi, Nicole, come on up. You can have a
what
seat
I
either here.
Yeah. I'm like still just nervous enough about the technology that I assume that I'm always wrong.
You're in the right place.
I'm in the right place. Hey, how's it going? It's nice to see you in the person.
I know, I've seen your faces, but never like in person.
In real life.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so I can briefly cover the process. I will give you a few minutes to introduce yourself, and then we'll run through a list of standard questions. And then as we have time, beyond those questions, I'll open it up for board members to ask other questions. It will last about 15 minutes, and then we will interview the other candidate, John Grummel. And then at 5:30, the board will begin to deliberate and we'll make the appointment tonight and swear in the candidate that has been selected. Do you have any questions before we start?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, I'll give you a chance to briefly introduce yourself before we jump into questions.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. My name is Nicole Vafadari. I know some of you, most of you actually. So my family and I relocated to Fitchburg about 3 years ago. And we were looking for a place to raise our two children, one child at the time. And we felt very strongly about being in the Verona area school district. And so when the board position opened a few months ago, when was that? A few months ago, yeah. I felt very strongly about running for that seat. I lost out to 3 amazing humans that you see here. And throughout that entire process, it was actually like one of the most positive losses I've ever experienced in my life, because I just got to talk with awesome people about how to make the lives of our children and teachers and support staff that much better. And so as the daughter of an educator, I feel very strongly about the importance of education. As the daughter of an immigrant, I also feel very strongly about investing in one's community. And then as a mother, I feel super strongly about not only making sure this school district maintains its excellence for my children, but also for the children around me. I feel very strongly. I've volunteered with the Boys and Girls Club. I've been an ESL tutor to children and parents. And so just with a lot of that, I found this an amazing opportunity to be able to serve my community and serve people around me. And maybe bring an outside perspective of a newer parent, having children ages 3 years and 9 months, kind of at the other side of the spectrum, and really putting the hours and the sweat equity where my words are, and really getting that opportunity to serve those around me. So I'm also, what I do for my day job. I am the Senior Director of IT Applications at Health Grades. So I manage a team of developers and business analysts, and we implement healthcare technology. So a lot of fun stuff every day, pretty much.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I think you may have covered the answer to this question, but I'll try and phrase it in a way that maybe will give you an opportunity to address it more directly. There are a lot of ways that you can get involved in your community. And what in particular motivated you to apply to the VASD Board of Education?
Sure. I think one of the things that growing up, I grew up in Texas, and I grew up in an area where it was very well known that if you wanted a good education, you paid for private school. And I attended private school, and then I moved to Michigan, and we had access to amazing public schooling. And so I want that for my children, but I also want to provide that and fight for that for the children in the community in which I live. I feel it is extremely important as a person who has the means to make sure that all children have access to excellent education. And so I think that was an area of interest. And also I have pretty thick skin. And when I was first going door to door to collect signatures, I told someone I was running for the school board, and he said, thank you. That's the only time you will hear that. And so he said, prepare yourself. It's a thankless job filled with lots of service. And I feel like I'm well equipped to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Jen, would you read question 2, please?
I will.
Thank you.
Nicole, if appointed to this board seat, in what ways would you support the strategic plan?
Yeah, so I think there are kind of key focus areas to look at. The first one, and clearly top of mind of most parents, is kind of, COVID isn't gone for children under the age of 12. COVID isn't gone for anybody. But I think really addressing those concerns and hearing from parents and children and making sure that we are addressing everybody's needs and in a way that benefits everyone with equity. I think that's a key importance factor. And then I think the other thing is just continuing to really dig in and understand and pay attention to the budget and where we're spending our dollars. I think there's a lot of great ideas that come up, and then you look at the dollars and cents and you have to figure out how that works. I manage a team of developers where we have to meet profit margins and clients who have strategic initiatives, and we have to manage project budgets and ensure, quality and volumes are appropriate. And so I think that's another kind of outside perspective that I believe I could bring, is an understanding and thoughtfulness to the budget and how to support all the important line items on that.
Thank you.
One second, I cannot multitask at all.
No worries.
Yeah.
We're not in a
Judgment.
rush.
Okay, question 3. What is your understanding of the role of an individual board member in a school district?
That's a great question. So I think the first role of a board member is to partner with, support, and keep in check the superintendent. So Dr. Clardy, making sure that we're really partnering with you and giving you an outside perspective that you might need in regards to how to support the parents and staff and students of the school district. So I think that's one key area, and just making sure that all of the voices are heard in that relationship. I think the second thing is also just taking a really thoughtful approach to things like the budget and where dollars are being spent. I feel very strongly that sentiments and best laid plans need to be backed by appropriate funding. And so that's something that bringing a keen eye, especially to areas to make sure that money is being spent in an equitable way, but also in the best way. I think during one of the conversations that we had during the election, this idea of too many initiatives being brought up and really focusing our attention and drive there. And I think that's the other thing of taking many well-intentioned ideas and focusing and taking inputs from various people and saying, where do we get the most bang for our buck? And where can really focus and make some change.
Thank you. John, question 4.
Sure. So one of the pillars of our strategic plan is the equitable allocation of resources. And you've talked about that in your answer so far. What does that mean to you more specifically, the equitable aspect?
Yeah, I think equity is much more difficult than equality in the fact that it involves looking at the gray and looking at the different effects and different needs being brought to the table, and making sure I'm not funding each thing equally, but rather funding the right things to the appropriate level. Again, I think a big part is, not half funding something or not doing it just to say that you've done it, but actually saying, is this funded to the appropriate level? But I think the other thing is also investing the time and making sure that those initiatives are successful, making sure that the funding is being used properly, and really looking and saying, what do some of our students need to be successful, and acknowledging that's very different than maybe their peers. I have a brother who had special education needs. That was very different. He needed different support than I needed. Speech therapy, things like that. So I think it takes a really keen and thoughtful eye, and someone who's willing to dig into the details in order to achieve that equity.
Thank you very much. Christina?
Question 5. What do you believe is currently the greatest area of need for the Verona Area School District?
I think the greatest area of need is probably with kids coming back from from this past year, trying to reinstill a new sense of normal. I wouldn't say the old sense of normal, because I think many of you spoke to this in different forums as well, but the old sense of normal wasn't really working. It wasn't really equitable for everyone. And I think we also learned some amazing adaptable things. COVID forced us to be quite creative. And so I think it is, put upon us to make sure that, we say every student must be successful. I think that's more crucial now than ever. And making sure that specific students aren't being left behind, and making sure that all students feel safe in their return to school and parents feel supported in that as well. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge at this point. And of course, making those difficult budget decisions to figure out how to do so.
Thank you very much. Meredith?
So this kind of goes, I think, a little bit to your new sense of normal. What additional action should the Board of Education take to address gaps in equity?
I think that's a great question. I think one of the things that the board should do is start and continue with listening. I think it's a huge part to listen to those who are heading specific initiatives, teachers who are involved in the school, support staff who are involved in the school, and ensure that we understand what's working, what's not, what are we not doing that we should be doing. I think a really important focus should also be on mental health. I know just from my own kids, I didn't give enough credit to how much a 3-year-old could be impacted by COVID. And my biggest negative impact was not successful potty training, which we can all get over eventually. But fingers crossed someday. But I think that's, these could have huge impacts on our kids. And so I do think really investing in mental health and support for not only students, but also families, and making sure that that's really accommodated for is one example of what we should look at as far as equity, because I think while there's also a disparity to things like access, food security, there's also quite a bit of disparity when you look at communities of color or communities of different economic advantage and mental health in that area.
Thank you very much. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'll open it up to the board for other questions.
Noah, I had a question that I will ask both candidates. So
Excellent.
you're first.
Go for it.
So Fitchburg has been a focal point in our district for some time. We're seeking ways to bridge the gap in community between Fitchburg and Verona. So how would you, or what would you bring to the board as it relates to this disconnect and merging that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a little obsessed with my community. I live in the Seminole Forest neighborhood, and I've never felt such a tight tie to those around me. I've already felt like people in the cul-de-sac across from me maybe co-parent my children. I don't know. I feel like we all live in this co-parenting situation. But they already weigh in on, hey, this is where my kid goes to school, or hey, these are the different benefits and values. I do think there needs to be, within Fitchburg, there's quite a bit of diversity, economic diversity, as well. And I think one key area to do is partner with local organizations to make sure that we're reaching out to communities. So for example, the Boys and Girls Club has a great location on Allied Drive that I volunteered at, and it's right in the middle of Fitchburg. And so being able to partner with various communities like that, being able to partner with Little John's Kitchen, things like that. But then I think also just kind of having community engagement days and figuring out what parents need in order to feel engaged, and how to draw them in. Because I also have quite a few members who have chosen to go to private schools, and I find myself questioning, wow, we live in a really great school district. Why is that your choice? We have so many options. And so I'd love to get to the heart of that and then engage with the community and understand, why that decision was made, And is there anything that we can do to kind of bring those families into the fold? So I think there's a couple different aspects and different ways that we could engage with the community. But I think the smartest way would be to leverage organizations that are already invested in the community as well.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I have one. So I'm curious, as we're appointing a new board member, I'm looking for somebody, what new or unrepresented voice will you bring to the existing board table?
Absolutely. So I think I bring a couple areas of difference and aspect. Number one, I think being a younger parent is kind of a little bit of a different voice. My kids are just starting out. They're actually not even in Verona schools quite yet. And so I think there's that level of investment and perspective of how to reach out to new parents and get them involved in the school board. It might seem like old hat to parents who've had kids already in the community. It's not very obvious to those of us joining. And so I think that's one way. I think the other way is being a young female professional within IT. I feel very strongly about investment in STEM education. I feel very strongly about preparing our youth. I know when we were interviewed by 100 Black Men of Madison, I believe 3 of the 4 students were interested in IT careers. I feel super strongly about mentoring. I've mentored through the Wisconsin Women's Network. And so I think that is another perspective of, not every child's path is going to be through college. That's not what four-year college might not look like success to everybody. 2-year technical school might be success. Trade school might be success. And so I think when we look at what does success look like for every student, bringing that kind of diversity and understanding of where careers could take students is something I feel super passionately about.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We should
Thank-
probably check the time too.
Yep. We've got 1 minute left. So are there any last questions from the board?
We've
Okay.
already grilled you, apparently.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share? We have 1 minute, so.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. I just want to tell you all you're doing a fabulous job. Being engaged and watching the board meetings and watching all the thoughtful discussion that goes into it. I think I've told my neighbors are so annoyed with me. They're like, okay, we get it. The school board is hard work, but all the thoughtful conversations, I just want to thank you all. Say thank you because I know you don't get it enough, but thank you for the time that you put into things because it is very appreciated by everybody. So.
Well, thank you. And we certainly are grateful and appreciative of your interest in serving on the board. Not only your run in your campaign this last spring, but also your interest in this appointment.
Yeah.
So sincerely appreciate that.
If anyone needs some extra flyers for like fans or anything, I got like 1,000 at my house, so you just call me up. Thank you all.
Well,
I
thank you
really
very much.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, and I think Rachel just wanted to check to see if our other
Okay.
candidate is here. You can stay in or whichever is most comfortable.
Yep.
It's really
Feel free to take a few minute recess and I'll come grab you when we're ready for the next interview.
Okay.
Is he outside?
Yes.
Yep. Feel free to bring him down.
If you go out both doors to the main hallway
much for
and take a
recess,
left and kind of go up the ramp, it'll be on your right-hand side. Yeah. It's kind of very Wizard of Oz like.
Right. No, really.
I was pulling levers back there.
I have like a little massaging gun that I use. And I'm like, I wonder if this is quiet enough for me to like use it on my legs while I'm sitting here.
Hey, let me say thank you to whoever got me capital letters on my sign.
Oh, you didn't have them
I
before?
finally feel like I'm one of your peers.
Do we all have
Yeah,
capital?
yeah.
You all
it's-
had capitals and I had
It's real bad.
lowercase. And I was like, oh,
that morning.
the graphic designer, the former graphic designer in me was like, man, what do I
I
gotta
guess
do
the
to earn some
hazing
capital
period's
letters?
over, so now you get the capitals.
Orientation.
Probationary period, I didn't flunk out.
The junior board member orientations is now.
Hey,
Stretch it out.
Hi there, welcome.
So it's been crazy. Hi, come on up. You
Yeah,
can
feel
have a
free to
seat
join
right
us.
Over here, next to John. Well, John, basically, John.
I won't tell him that.
Not getting work out.
Welcome. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you.
Good, excellent. Well, my name is Noah Roberts, and I serve as president of the school board. Just briefly outline the process here, and then see if you have any questions before we jump into it. We'll give you a few minutes to introduce yourself, and then we'll run through a standard list of 6 questions. And if we have time, I'll open it up to the board for additional questions. Following your interview, which I'll set a timer and we'll set it for 15 minutes, the board will deliberate and make an appointment tonight and swear in the new member this evening. Any questions before we begin? Okay.
And Rachel.
Just to make sure that the people on our live stream can hear him.
Yes. Yep. Yes. A reminder for all board members to speak into your microphone. I know it's sometimes hard to forget when we're the only people in this large room, but for the benefit of the folks watching online, please speak into the microphone.
Get used to Zoom, where you can see each other and where's the mute button? Because you were always muted when we talk.
There's no mute button here.
There's no mute
It's
button.
terrifying.
Any questions, John, before we begin?
No, that's what was explained to me in the
Okay.
email. They were all very informative. So
Excellent. Well, feel free to take it away.
All right. I'm Dr. John Grummel. I don't always say doctor. I get used to my students just calling me John sometimes. They do not like Mr. all the time, though. So, I'm a professor of political science at Upper Iowa University, although we have a center in Madison. You've probably driven by it. They're going to move. But I do mainly online teaching with the Master of Public Administration. So that's kind of some background on me. I've studied all sorts of aspects of which education policy is one of them. With regards to what I've done here recently, I have 2 daughters, both at Country View, right up the road. Both are autistic, and so I've really gotten to know all the special needs staff and faculty, not only at Country View, but for summer school this year. That's been fun because they're switching caseworkers. They're in 1st and 3rd grade. And when my oldest started in kindergarten or 1st grade, I became part of the Parent Advisory Council on Special Needs. Wonderful group of people to work with. And then COVID kind of hit as we were getting ready to move forward with some stuff. And so I wasn't sure where that was going. And so that's part of the impetus for when I saw this available from our rep in Verona, Joe. I can never remember his last name. I'm just so used to calling him Joe. He sent out information, said, hey, there's a seat open. I'm like, oh, I never have time to even think about running for election until after they've announced, oh, there's an election. So I thought I would give it a shot because I am interested in what's going on in the schools. And having 2 kids in the Verona School District, which every year I appreciate more and more what they've done. Even though my experience is limited really to Country View, wonderful staff there. So I'm assuming, I'm going to generalize and say that everyone working with the Verona Area School District is wonderful. Well, they are on the parent council, the folks I work with there, they've all been just great people to work with. So that's why.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll start with the first question, which I think you've touched on a little bit, but if you could more specifically discuss what motivated you to apply for the seat on the Board of Education.
Two things. One, I've already touched on, having worked with the Parent Advisory Council of Special Needs. Also, the chair of my own university's Diversity Inclusion Committee. We're looking at changing our name to Inclusivity, Diversity, what is it? IDEA. I know, so, but that work there and understanding the importance of diversity. I was even asking before COVID hit, I'd heard that the high school had a group and they might have an advisory council for parents. So I've been looking into that as well. But mainly just being able to work with kids before they get to the level I teach at, I think is extremely important. And since I'm not teaching there, but being able to have even some indirect impact on the lives of kids these days, I try in my way. So,
Thank you very much. Question 2, Jen?
Hi, John. If appointed to the board seat, I think I need bifocals. This is really driving me crazy. Okay. If appointed to this board seat, in what ways would you support the strategic plan?
could you repeat the first? I got.
You bet.
I got strategic plan and there was something just before that. I missed it.
In what ways would you support the strategic plan if appointed to the board?
That's a good question. I read the minutes and I read the notes and I read the agenda and I have skimmed the strategic plan, but only parts of it. So that's a difficult question because like I said, my experiences with Country View. And so my experience there is limited. I wanted to be able to say I had time to join the PTA and I did kind of the first year and then I didn't. I would do whatever I could to support it because I know just based on my girls' education that whatever they're doing, I approve of them doing it. I know with some of the building, I know more about building the high school and I get everything and I follow out, but now the high school's built. So I wish I could say more on that, but I have not. I barely have read my own university strategic plan. They're very technical and I helped write part of it.
Thank you. Yana, question 3.
Sure. Hi, John. What is your understanding of the role of an individual board member in a school district?
To oversee, well, when I think of board members, I think that they are in charge of they have fiduciary responsibility, but also I've noticed that boards have had a larger amount with regards to curricular responsibility to some extent, but that could vary depending on the state. I know in some states they have a lot of power in those areas, individual school districts. I'm not sure how much it is here, but I know with regards to the fiduciary responsibility, I know that's usually what I hear from school boards. It's making sure they don't spend too much money or let's build something nice and pretty like the high school, things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question 4, John.
So one of the pillars, I've got to follow our own rules here. One of the pillars of our strategic plan is the equitable allocation of resources. What specifically does that mean to you?
Equitable, what that means to me is that all students in some way, shape, or form receive benefits of some kind and services, not necessarily equal. For example, I know summer school has been fun because like my youngest daughter, I'm not having her go to summer school. Well, she was on a wait list, but it's difficult. It would have been difficult to send her because she would not have received a one-on-one aid. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's not exactly equitable because she basically is kept out of summer school because she needs a one-on-one aid. She would get off the van and just wander right off. Whatever's near Badger Ridge Elementary School, she'd go explore it and never make it into class. Whether or not there are students, the pandemic really highlighted those students who may not have had reliable internet service. And so equitable would be allowing them to experience get their education despite gaps in resources due to whatever reason that might be. I could go on and on about this question since being the chair of a committee that deals with this, and it's something I try to remind people of all the time. So I could go on, but I know I only have 2 or 3 more questions and then follow-ups in 15 minutes. That's probably already going by faster than I know.
Well, thank you. Christina, question 5.
What do you believe is currently the greatest area of need for the Verona Area School District?
That's tough because I'm happy with the way my students learn stuff. So trying to think what they could do better is I don't know if need is the right word for me right now, because when I like what I see, at least at the elementary school level. And so anything they're doing, I'd like to see them do more of, depending on resources. And I'm sure in part that has to do with the people that are being hired and that have been working for the school. So I know it's tough to always have good teachers, good support staff, good administrators, and that might not be the biggest need, but it helps make meeting other needs easier when you have good people in place. So anything to do to get the best people and attract good people, I think is important there. I just think my experience is too limited to just being one school to think of something that the school district itself might need.
Thank you. Meredith, question 6.
This kind of ties into some things that you've already touched on. So, but what additional actions should the Board of Education be taking to address gaps in equity in any ways that you see exist?
My experience is limited, but impacts me greatly with regards to the service for special needs. I know they're doing a lot. I have no complaints about my caseworkers at all. They have been so helpful. And the school itself, like I said, I'm limited to Country View, but the new principal, I had a chance to meet her when she first started. She was did a thing right actually down the street from us. They had a little meet and greet thing from where we live, and I got to spend about 15 minutes talking to her. And then a number of the staff, some have been promoted and or retired this year, but all very helpful. But I know even from talking from them that there are issues that need to be addressed there. Same thing with, resources are going to vary depending on where people live in the community. And Verona seems like is a relatively well-to-do school district, but you're still going to have gaps there. And so anything they can do in those areas, I think it's not always addressed. We sometimes forget if we're doing well, we don't think that others might not. And so I think thinking about if we can bring up the students that are having the most trouble due to resources, not necessarily because I assume students, if you get them in a good learning environment, they will learn because the environment's important. But if you're focused on helping them, it helps everyone. So that's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there because I could go on. I get a little passionate about helping the folks at the bottom move up. So.
Thank you very much. Well, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'll open it up to the board for additional questions.
All right, I'll ask mine first. Everybody's looking at me. Reason being, John, I said that I was going to ask this question to both candidates, so that's why everybody's looking at me.
All right.
So Fitchburg has been a focal point in our district for some time. We've been seeking ways to bridge the gap in community between Fitchburg and Verona. How would you, or what would you bring to the board as it relates to this disconnect and merging?
Not exactly sure where well, Fitchburg is a little, when I think of Fitchburg, I think of it's kind of diverse, but I also think of Verona as being diverse. So I'm not knowing exactly where the disconnect is. I'd certainly want to try to figure out what that is and understand it better and try to do what could be done to bring those communities I'm guessing there's some disconnect, given that there is a little bit of a boundary, a geographical difference. You know, we're in Fitchburg. Sometimes we feel a little far away. I mean, it might have something to do with that too. But I've never been, I don't think I've ever felt unwelcome about anything there. So I'm not sure what the disconnect is exactly, but I'd certainly look into it. I know there seems to be differences in some of the neighborhoods too that is served by the Verona Area School District, and that might be where some of the disconnect is. So community outreach sometimes can be quite helpful. I'm kind of guessing at that. I'll admit it. I'm just trying to think in my head about where I live and where I go walking in Fitchburg and how it might be different from when I drive around Verona. So.
I have a question. So as we're appointing somebody, we're looking to make sure that we have voices that are representative of our district. And so what unrepresented perspective would you be able to bring to the board if you were appointed?
Well, I represent my daughters because one can't really talk. It's mainly in the special needs area. I also do a lot of work. I do research and am somewhat involved, mainly through the research I do, but also at my university, we're working on ally training and updating that because I've been involved off and on in the LGBTQ community more than just part of it, but actually doing work. And I do research with regards to treatment of LGBTQ in healthcare, trying to find ways that they're accounted for in needs assessment and healthcare. So those two.
Thank you.
Old people. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't feel old, but still.
We've got about 2 minutes left. Other questions from the board?
I'll ask something.
Yeah.
So this is a unique way of becoming a board member, being appointed. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about running, because obviously this is to fill out the remainder of a board member's term, but would eventually result in having to decide whether to run or not in a regular election.
I'll admit, I felt like I'm kind of cheating because it's an open seat right now with someone stepping down and it's not an election. And I have thought about running at various times in the past. I thought about here a little bit earlier because we've lived in Verona now for 4 years. And my oldest started kindergarten, and hoping to get to the 5-year mark, so that, which will be getting close when they have elections next. So I was hoping to reach about 5 years, because then you get to know a little bit more and get involved. You learn more with things going on in the school. I still feel like I'm just still learning, but I'm so focused in one small area with everything my two girls need. But yeah, I thought about it in the past, but I wanted to live somewhere long enough that I felt that it's just an insider coming in. We're getting close to that, but I did read that and the announcement for the open seat. I'm going, it's a little earlier than I want. I kind of feel like I'm cheating. We're kind of just moving. It's easier than running, certainly. That takes more time, and I did read all the stuff for the folks who had the little something in the newspaper, and I got to read all your statements before the last election, the 5 of you who were in there. So it's actually very helpful. So it gave me some insight too about that process and what's involved too. So did that answer your question in part?
Well, yeah, I'm just curious because like you said, it is a unique way, a different way of getting on the board.
Yeah, no, I
So
recognize
it's
that.
interesting to know whether people have considered the prospect of running in a regular election.
Yeah, not quite yet, but I did. For the reason I stated. So yeah.
Excellent. I think that we have hit our time limit, but I'll give you 30 seconds if you have any closing thoughts, statement.
No, other than I just want to. Yes, it's a unique situation here, and I just wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to come in here and have 15 minutes, my 15 minutes of time on the board without a mute button. It's nice meeting all of you, and maybe I'll see you along there.
Excellent.
So,
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome
welcome
to
to-
sit
yeah,
anywhere amongst the theater here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see. We're going to start our next meeting a little bit late, and that's okay, but we'll move into our deliberation portion. Before we kick it off, just a reminder that board members will be asked to vote on their ballot. You'll put your name on the ballot and then the name of the individual that you'll be voting for, and I will read those ballots off. And it will not be a secret ballot, so I will read your name and then the vote. And before we start our deliberation, I just want to again thank both of our candidates who have applied. I think, and this is true for nearly every time that we've appointed a board member, that we have fantastic community members who have thrown their hat in the ring. And so I certainly appreciate both Nicole and John and their courage to put their name into consideration. I particularly appreciate Nicole's vigor and her previous run. I think that shows a strong commitment to our district, and absolutely appreciate John's service in an advisory council. So I think that both candidates have perspectives and passions that I think would serve us well. So I'll open it up for thoughts from the board on the appointment.
Well, I'll echo the same. I think we have such excellent candidates that were willing to even be considered for appointment. So I appreciate both Nicole and John putting their name in the hat, even to put themselves out here. And also, I would also agree with Noah. Just this is a difficult process when you have no wrong answers. So I am very grateful for our appointees, our interviewees. I think as a board member, when we're going through the appointment process, I'm looking to find somebody who will bring that unrepresented voice to the table. And in this case, I think that both Nicole and John do have aspects that they bring to the table. I think this highlights that we need to have a closer liaison with our special needs community. And I think that is something that I have learned from this process. I think this is a tricky decision. This is very hard. Thank you for making it difficult to our interviewees.
Any other thoughts?
I just want to say thanks for the additional questions that the few of you asked. Being a new board member, I thought the questions helped me a lot, and just to offer the perspectives that you all have, having served in the role longer. So thank you for that additional information. That really has helped me start to process my decision. So thank you.
I would just like to echo something that John said, that, this is a special circumstance. And it was certainly a lot easier to lose to Kellyanna the first time. Losing to her the second time took a lot more work in the actual election.
Took a lot more work on my part too, John, just so everyone knows.
But over the course of the election, I had to, be a lot more rigorous in thinking about the issues that face the district. And I had to be a lot more sure about my ability to commit my time to do the work up here. And those are two things that I'm very grateful for as we embark on some work that is going to take a lot more time and rigor. That's very much at the forefront of my mind, and kind of thinking about this. So I'm just throwing that out. That's just a comment. Thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Not that I'm keeping score, Eliana.
I would say too, as someone who was appointed and then had to run shortly thereafter, the time goes quick between now and April and preparing. But, even with being appointed, one of the things that, as we think about who we're selecting, making decisions starts immediately. I think I was appointed, sworn in, and made like a $18 million decision within 5 minutes. So it just happens really quick. So, to whoever we do decide to select for this appointment, just be prepared to hit the ground running, because you don't have the same amount of time to kind of prep as you would if you were preparing to run and then running a campaign and kind of waiting that out. So it's going to be some sleepless nights after tonight, but it's definitely rewarding. Like I said, I was appointed and then decided to continue and to run for a seat on the board. So lots of fun work, great work, but work nonetheless.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your comments. And I think before we move into the ballot portion, I'm going to explain how I'm going to vote, and not every board member has to, but you're certainly welcome to. As I said before, I think we have two fantastic candidates and can't go wrong. But I think the thing that is tipping it over for me is that Nicole has shown some commitment for some time in running for a seat. And I certainly appreciate those who have gone through that process, because it is arduous and you do have to put yourself out there, and you speak to a lot of people and learn a lot of different perspectives. So I think that I'll be voting for Nicole for that reason, that I just sincerely appreciate those who have decided to run, because it is a challenging process. But again, we have two fantastic candidates, and I sincerely appreciate them putting their hat in the ring. So with that, I'll open up if there are other last comments before we do our ballot vote. Otherwise, feel free to cast your vote, and you can pass it along to me, and I'll read those out and tally it.
No, I'm just going to ditto what you said. I'm similarly voting for Nicole, but I want to thank both of our candidates today for their positivity. I think what impressed me so much is that they have really strong appreciation for our staff and for the work of our school district, and want to support that with their own, time and energy. And again, as you said, I will be supporting Nicole because I know the time and energy it took for her to run, and I was impressed with that time and energy that she put in. But again, I think it's wonderful to have two people who both really value what the school district means for our students and are willing to put their own personal energy into helping that effort.
Absolutely. Thank you. If there aren't any other additional comments, feel free to pass along your ballot.
Thanks.
All right, I'll start with myself. I casted my vote for Nicole. We have a vote from Yana for Nicole. We have a vote from Jen for Nicole. And we have a vote from Meredith for Nicole, a vote from John for Nicole, and a vote from Christina for Nicole. So Nicole Vafadari has been appointed by the board to fill the vacant seat. And again, I want to thank both Nicole and John for their interest in the seat. And there are elections every spring, and I think that every board member, we all like to call attention to the opportunities that happen each year. There are usually multiple seats open every spring. So I sincerely appreciate the interest in this seat and encourage people to consider running in the future. But with that concludes our board workshop.
I wanted to add just one thing, and I wanted to say, thank you also to Dr. Grummel for coming and interviewing. And I think that this really highlights a need for the board to be working and liaising with the special education parents group to make sure that we are hearing all perspectives. And I would hope that Dr. Grummel would be able to serve as a liaison in that type of capacity as we move forward.
Absolutely. And I have utmost appreciation for your service on the advisory council. And there will be multiple open seats in this next election. And I certainly encourage you to run. I appreciate your service to our district thus far. All right. Any other comments from the board before we move from our workshop to our regular board meeting? All right. Hearing none, we're going to shift over to our regular agenda. I'm going to, do I need? Yep. Yes, Nicole, please feel free to join us here at the table. I'm going to call this regular meeting to order. Has the meeting been properly noticed, Christina?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know that I read the statement earlier, but I'm going to do it again to emphasize how important it is for us to continue to center our students and our strategic plan at each board meeting. We'll be starting a new tradition of reading the VASD equity statement before each meeting, and we'll rotate each board member. We'll have the opportunity to read the statement to ensure that we're grounding ourselves in the work that we're all here for, which is to support our students and make sure that every student has what they need to be successful. And that statement is that each student has access to the resources and educational rigor that they need at the right moment in their education, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, ability, language, family background, or family income. Dr. Clarity, would you like to add anything on that front?
First, good evening, everyone. I'm very delighted to have my first meeting as the new superintendent of Verona Area School District. I'm very proud of this Board of Education for not just acknowledging, but having a willingness to lead through the educational equity stance that you see before you on the screen. That is, one of the reasons it's important that it's there is that equity at times can get misconstrued into a number of different issues or slogans or phrases and become quickly misaligned unless we are very specific about what we mean when we say educational equity. The stance and phrase and the mission that Noah just read and this before you on the screen is exactly what we mean when we say educational equity. It's not to be twisted, misconstrued as to anything else. It's exactly what you see. So each of the decisions that this Board of Education will make and the leadership moves that I will make as a superintendent are grounded in this equity stance. So I appreciate our willingness to put it before our community at the beginning of each Board of Education meeting, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful and long tenureship as the new superintendent of Verona Area School District.
Thank you very much. And we will be moving on to public comment. I'm going to look to Rochelle to see if we have a microphone for in-person public comment. And okay, excellent. Do we want people to enter up onto the stage? Okay, excellent. While we do that, I'm going to read through the one public comment that we have that's been submitted via email. This comment is from Cody Ashbeck, who writes, I am concerned about a new class at our middle schools. This class is called Youth Empowerment, Justice, and Joy. After talking with the school director, it was confirmed that the curriculum is not yet defined. It is irresponsible to require a class that is not yet defined less than 2 months from the start of the school year. Also, to make room for the class, the foreign language program was modified. The problem, though, is that our students are now introduced to a foreign language at a year later than before. This is the wrong direction. We should introduce our students to foreign languages earlier, not later. Everything about this new class seems forced, problematic, contentious, and destined for failure. Please postpone it for 1 year so it can be debated and reviewed. And it is my understanding that that public comment will be addressed during a presentation under the superintendent's report. So for those who are in person viewing this meeting or online viewing this meeting, please stay tuned and hopefully your questions and concerns will be addressed. Now, we'll start with public comment in person. For those who have signed up, feel free to start making a line down here at the start of the stage. We'll welcome you onto the stage and you can speak into the microphone at the open seats here. We have 3 that are signed up so far, and we will start with Bob Ross. So feel free to join us on the stage where the open seats are with the microphone. And again, a reminder, not just for those who are in public comment, but for board members as well. If you could try and speak directly into the microphone for the benefit of those who are viewing online, that is greatly appreciated. And welcome, you'll have about 5 minutes or less.
I don't think I need 5, the walk was probably longer than I need. But good evening.
That might not be on.
Pull it closer.
We'll see how that goes.
Excellent.
Okay. So good evening, board members. Appreciate your time tonight. Just had a few things I wanted to chat with you about, or at least kind of put out there that my wife and I thought were important. And the first one actually was talked about, I guess, in a letter to the board in the public comment there. But you know, I think when we first heard that this new class was going to be offered or put into place, it kind of elicited 2 reactions. The first one was interest and, okay, what is this? And then the second one was concern over, is this, you know, like, is this something that, you know, sort of fits the values, the narrative and everything else. And so the interest comes just because we're involved parents, right? Like we're very involved in our children's education, and the concern comes from some of the things you hear out there, you know, around new curriculum being put in place, sort of the background of that, you know, across certain areas of the country, and just recognizing that sometimes these classes can be sort of divisive and potentially more activism than education. And so that's where the concern piece of it comes from. It's particularly concerning to us because in this year of virtual learning, we had the opportunity to overhear a fair amount of what was going on in some of these classes. And we did, you know, hear a number of instances where teachers' personal political opinions were being broadcast through the classroom. This is specifically through middle school in this experience. And so that's unfortunate. And I think to me, that's a red flag of how sensitive and challenging discussions are occurring in the classroom at times. And I don't know if that's happening every time or with every teacher, but you know, that is a concern. And so, you know, unfortunately, there's sort of little balance there for you know, young middle school students to challenge the authority and the teacher's narrative at that age. And so, you know, it's of sort of concern, what is the content of that course? And so because of where we're at and what we've seen firsthand, we're really asking for 2 things. And one is just public transparency, is what is the content of the course? And a more detailed understanding of what our learners will be exposed to. And then the second one is understanding, is this going to be a mandatory class, or is this something that will be ultimately optional for our learners? The second topic I wanted to discuss was just understanding more about what the current position is on mask mandates going into this fall. You know, I think that, you know, it feels like maybe it's a long way away, but this really less than 2 months away, as you guys are all probably well aware. And so we'd like to know what is that position. I think that I saw that there's going to be a virtual option for those who are uncomfortable returning in person. But for those who do return in person, I'll tell you that our position, our goal is to see that they have a fully optional as to whether or not to wear masks coming back to school this fall. And so if those folks who want to return in person choose to wear a mask, great. I think we should have a welcoming environment that makes them feel comfortable to do so. I think for those who do not want to wear a mask, I think that should be you know, open for them to do that as well. So I guess the sooner we hear kind of where we're going with that, and then what the contingency plans would be if things change substantially from where we're at today. That's what we're hoping to hear. So those 2 items, and appreciate your time. Appreciate any feedback that we get through this meeting and through future communication.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate it. Next, we have Karen Pings.
I'm actually going to let Vanessa go because I have to pick up a kid from.
Oh, sure. Yep. Absolutely. Vanessa Hemsey, welcome. Hi there.
Thanks for your flexibility. I
No,
just have a
not a
couple
problem.
minutes before I'm late. I just wanted to speak to, I don't have anything prepared, but I also want to speak about the transparency I'd like to see as a parent. I right now have 4 kids that will be at an elementary school. And I also echo what Bob was saying about being able to see things that were being said. I have the ability to be a stay-at-home parent, so I was very involved with my children's online learning and some of the classes that were being taught. It wasn't overwhelming, but some of the social emotional things that were being taught were introducing stereotypes to my kids that they had never once thought about, because I feel like kids don't see things as adults do, and sometimes we push it on them too early. So a lot of these things I think need to be saved for older children. I'm not sure I think the exact age, but I think it can be more harmful than beneficial, even though we're trying to be beneficial with what we're teaching them. But I think it can do more harm. So I'd just like to also, with that middle school class that you said will be spoken about later, so I'm very curious to hear what that will be. Just to know what that's about, and just really lay out the curriculum for all parents, and also provide opportunities, like was mentioned in the letter, for parents and the board members to be able to vote on this new curriculum instead of pushing it out. Like you said, it's 2 months away and we still don't even know what this class is. And that seems kind of like a rushed timeline, in my opinion. So just, really pushing for transparency. I'd also like to speak briefly on masking and vaccination. I think it's really important we provide the opportunity for families to make decisions that they think is best for their children's health. Verona is offering virtual learning, which I think is amazing opportunity for families. I think masking should be optional for families, as well as I really want to make sure we don't have division between vaccinated families and unvaccinated, just because that can really pull apart communities, I think. And I really think health should be left to doctors and families to make those decisions, what is best for their families. I just had experience even last year with my children on an 80-degree day running the mile, being forced to wear a mask the entire time. And it was a very terrible experience. And just the science is continuing to show that it's not as necessary. So I think just giving the option, not saying not at all mask, people just leave that freedom. It is a public school, and just different ideas be left up to individual families, I think is really important, those freedoms. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karen Pings. Welcome.
Hello, this is my first Verona School Board meeting.
Well, congratulations.
So, I thought I'd start out with a bang and start by speaking. I'm also kind of speaking on the same things that the previous speakers talked about. I am also concerned about this class. It was brought to my attention just about a week ago, and I had about 20 parents come up to me, and we all had kind of similar concerns. And we can't even really do anything about it because there's absolutely, you can't find anything. It's very hard to navigate. I know you're revamping the website. That's definitely a goal, I've heard. It's hard to find any information. And from an outsider, it feels like not transparency. And of course, not to be super controversial, but critical race theory is in the back of all of our minds. We all witnessed our kids' schooling for the first time. I always wish I could be a fly on the wall, but this year I was a fly in the room. I witnessed a lot of things that concerned me. If this class is controversial, I just ask that you inform all the parents and be transparent about what the goals are of this class. We're also concerned about the academic foundation of this class because last year was not great academically. Test scores were very low. A lot of kids were absent a lot. Virtual learning was not beneficial to a lot of kids. They did not thrive last year. And now we're changing a course. I've witnessed how great language has been because one of my daughters is in the TWE program at Sugar Creek. And I know how it is so beneficial to your brain, especially at a younger age. So I just want to advocate for that class, maybe, have an option. And I don't know what's going to get pushed from the 7th grade curriculum to accommodate that world language class the following year instead. And I also want to speak about, I also would like to see masks optional next year. A few communities such as Belleville, Baraboo, Edgerton, Evansville, Lodi, and Wanakee have decided to make masks optional in the fall. I know a lot of other school districts are waiting until closer because everything is a, ongoing, changing situation right now. But I would love to see, if you're going to make a decision either way, try asking teachers how they feel. Ask parents, send out a survey, find out some input before making the decision if you're not going to allow masks to be optional. And one last thing, I feel very strongly that kids should not be discriminated against based on their vaccination status. Unfortunately, this virus has become very political. And so putting something becoming outwardly apparent of something that's an internal personal decision, a medical freedom issue, I think would open the doors to discrimination and bullying in classrooms. I ask that you please not make different rules based on vaccine status next year for our children. They don't need to be the victims of, different political agendas. I appreciate you listening to me. I'm super nervous, but I'm glad that I got that over with. And now I can be more involved, as we all are probably happy that this is an in-person event. And it's nice to see all your smiling faces. And I hope our kids can see smiling faces and that smiles can be contagious this year, once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the last call for any additional public comment. All right, seeing none, really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to either email the board or attend a meeting in person to speak. The board always appreciates public input during our meetings, so thank you all. With that, we can move to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board?
Yes, I would like to welcome first Dr. Clarity to the district as the first board meeting. We're officially at a week and a half in now.
Yes, absolutely.
So welcome, and we're thrilled to have you sitting with us.
Thank you.
I'll also say the same to Nicole. Welcome, and we're thrilled to have you sitting with us. And we have so many new administrators on our team, and so I know we'll get introductions personally, but we are so grateful that you've joined VASD, and we really look forward to working with you. So welcome to all of you. This is the start of a new chapter for our district, and we're very excited to see our district grow. So thank you for being part of it, to everybody. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other announcements from the board?
No, I just want to acknowledge my gratitude for staff who are helping with summer school. My own students are not in summer school, but I have neighbors who are participating, and I'm always grateful for all of these staff that are willing and able to offer summer school. And I think this summer especially, it's very appreciated. So thank you very much. And thank you to the families and to our students for participating in summer school.
Thank you. Any other announcements from the board? Dr. Clardy, any announcements for you?
Absolutely. Again, thank you again for a tremendous opportunity to lead, which I'll say it now, I've said it all the time, we will be the national model for excellence grounded in equity. I truly believe that, and it starts at this moment. And I am encouraged by what I've heard. I'm encouraged by the direction that we are going, and I'm so thankful to this board for having trust in my leadership, in our leadership, to be able to move this community in a cohesive direction. With that said, I am very proud as one of my new leadership moves to announce the formation of 3 advisory councils that will report directly to the superintendent. There will be a student advisory council. We are going to be very intentional uplifting student voice, understanding their perspectives, and I think no one knows a child or a student's needs better than that student, and being able to have that directly reported to the superintendent is, I think, it's a great opportunity for students, and I am excited to have those voices with me. Beginning in September. The next 2 advisory councils will be a parent advisory council. We will be looking for recommendations from our school leadership for parents to be a part of the parent advisory council to the superintendent, followed by a teacher advisory council. I want to be very clear when I say teacher advisory council, yes, I'm talking about classroom teachers as well as any educator in the building. So that's I see everyone as a teacher in some way, whether it's food service, our psych, social work, our custodians. We provide an education in some way or manner to everyone that we interact with. So that is all inclusive, that we have those voices, and we're able to truly invest in Pillar 4 and uplifting our staff and allow them to do their best work. So extreme amount of excitement for those advisories, and I think they will help in serving and advising our leadership moves for the foreseeable future. Next, I just want to recognize some of our new additions to the Verona School District team that have not been able to be recognized yet. First is the new executive assistant to myself and to the Board of Education, Mrs. Rhiannon Smith, and she's actually behind the screen doing the presentation for us. So she might stick her head out here for us, but thank you, Rhiannon. A very, very familiar face, but in a new role, and will be working in partnership with me on these advisory councils. This is Ms. Tamara Stanley, who is our new Family and Community Engagement Coordinator. Congratulations, Tamara. We're also extremely excited for our new Director of Bilingual Programs and Instructional Equity, and Dr. Sylvia Romero Johnson. Leading our Director of Pupil Services, and in a new position is Mrs. Tracy Williams, who's sitting right behind you. And if you're ever having a day and you just need a smile to brighten your life, just Tracy Williams will bring that every single time. Thank you for everything you do, Tracy. And finally, for special education, our new Director of Special Education will be Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who is right here. Thank you, Sarah, for joining, and congratulations on your new position within the Verona Area School District. So that is all the announcements I have today. Just want to be clear that these are not all new hires, and these are repurposing of positions that were currently existed. We really felt that both our external candidates were very strong, but also elevated some internal candidates to new positions in direct service of our schools and our buildings. It is so important that we look at our organizational chart as not as a hierarchy. Our organizational chart is in direct service and support of schools. That is our vision and mission. The magic happens in the classroom. We can talk a lot out here, but the magic happens in the classroom, and that is our focus, is to keep students at the center of all of our decisions and make sure that we are supporting each individual school, each individual leader, and all of our staff and students, because that's where the excellence will come to life. So again, thank you for the opportunity, but I also wanted to, as we're announcing new hires, it's very important of why these people are in these spaces. It's for our students in our classroom.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clardy. And I think that this time of change, great change. As Meredith said, it's a new chapter for the Verona Area School District, and we're thrilled to work with you and support your leadership. I think that this calls for a round of applause for our new hires and those who are taking on new roles, our new superintendent. I sincerely appreciate everyone who's joining the team and looking forward to the many hours of work ahead. So, all right. Any other announcements from the board? Okay, hearing none, we can move to board business. Our first item of business is the swearing in of our new board member, Nicole Vafadari. Meredith or Christina will be leading the swearing in process.
Okay. So I will say a few words and you'll just repeat after me, but I also, Nicole gave you that cheat sheet in case I somehow
I very much appreciate
don't
it.
say the word. All right. I, Nicole Vafadari, having been appointed to the office of Verona Area School Board Member, Portion 2, City of Fitchburg,
Having been appointed to the office of Verona Area School Board Member, Portion 2, City of Fitchburg,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
of said office to the best of my ability.
of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'll open it up if you want to make any opening statements, but you do not have to if you don't want to. But certainly welcome you to the board and looking forward to working with you.
I am super honored by the opportunity to serve. And just for everyone here, I appreciate every parent. As a relatively new parent myself, I appreciate every parent taking any time out of their day to dedicate even more to their children. And I appreciate all of the teachers and support staff here. I am just so honored, and I would like to let everybody know here, and I would like to invite everyone to challenge me and constantly remind me that this is an honor to serve and should be based in that service. So thank you again for that opportunity, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item B of board business, the appointment of board treasurer. Before we proceed with that, I'd just like to recognize the service of Amy Almond, who I believe served the district for at least 16 years, many of her years as board treasurer, and has helped us maintain and build a very strong financial position that has led to once in a generation projects like we see with our new high school campus. So I'm incredibly grateful for her service and wish her the best in her new adventures. But I also have the privilege of appointing the new board treasurer, and I will be appointing Yana Williams, who has been an incredible addition to the board, has shown unmatched dedication, and has presented just incredibly valuable insights on how to make strategic investments that really impact our kids in positive ways. So Yana will serve as a board treasurer and as chair of the finance committee. And I'm appreciative that you're willing to take on this new role. So.
Thanks, Noah. I really appreciate it. And to everyone, Amy was doing this for a very, very long time. So I am asking for grace and patience as we move forward in developing, our budget and ensuring that we are adhering to Pillar 5 and allocating resources in a way that serves all of our students and the needs that they each have. So I look forward to it. And over time, I will feel a lot more confident in this role. Budgets are a challenge for me, and not that I can't keep budgets, but school budgets in Wisconsin are unique for those who may not know, but I look forward to the challenge and working with all of you and our new staff around the budgets for our school district. So thanks, Noah.
Thank you. All right, and now we can move on to item C of board business, and we'll consider approval of our consent agenda items. We have our regular board meeting minutes, and we have personnel items. Is there any individual discussion on any of these consent agenda items? Second call for any discussion. Last call. Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items. If there isn't an objection, this motion will be adopted. Are there any objections? Last call for any objections. Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved, and we can move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Clarity, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Noah. I was say it's weird having this behind me, so I'm just trying to get used to it. First, I want to again open with extreme gratitude. The picture that you see behind me is a representation of some of our staff or our central office leadership team, or some members of our central office leadership team. And I tell you, it's a group of individuals that are committed and dedicated to equity-based outcomes and in service of all of our students. And that means, as Noah represented, it is really adhering to our educational equity statement and being in service to all students at the time that they need the right services, sometimes the right interventions, sometimes the right acceleration. I also want to give gratitude to Amy Allman, who just stepped down from the board. You know, you're talking about 16 years of service to the Board of Education and in the role as a treasurer as well. Not only for her being a part of the hiring committee that brought me into this organization, but that is a significant amount of time and effort in service of community. And so we're forever indebted to that service and want to make sure that we give her the appropriate things. And thank you, Noah, for lifting that up. When you think about gratitude, during the onboarding process or during transition, I was able to get in front of multiple family members, community members, and just listen and learn from the perspectives of so many people across which is a very extensive boundary area. And I think the one thing that all of our family and community members wanted was for me to understand the perspective. We're not always going to agree. It's just not always going to happen. We're not always going to agree. But when we disagree, we can disagree with honor. And we knowing that you've been heard, that we've been respect, that there'll be respect, and that we will come to resolutions with students at the center. And I think the hardest part about educational leadership is that you're thinking about a vast, diverse clientele of students across from so many backgrounds and so many demographic areas and so many boundary areas and so many socioeconomic statuses. And what's necessary in one area may be different in another area. And so that means that you have to lead with conviction and a moral compass that we're going to do what's best for all of our students and keep that at the center of our decision making. And finally, I mentioned this earlier, and as not a disrespect to the adults, but I absolutely love and adore to be able to listen and learn from students. The tours of buildings and be able to sit down and talk to students. That's where you learn the most. Our students have such a perspective of what they're experiencing. They have such a perspective of what they need and desire in becoming a greater member of a global society, and they don't have any problems articulating to that in very candid manners. And so I'm appreciative to all of our students that I've been able to listen and learn from, and looking forward to the Student Advisory Council that will continue to carry on that vision of making sure students are heard. So I wanted us to reground us in the equity statement, because when we went through the hiring process, which, you know, it's probably been about a year and a half now of a hiring process. Obviously, I was with Madison Metropolitan during that time, but that was a very long process. But if you read any of the input from the community, either number one or number two on the list, sometimes they flip back and forth. The community clearly stated, do not back away from the equity work. Make sure that you analyze and understand what each student needs so every student will be successful. And they meant that. And I feel like when I talked about fit, it's not about being the superintendent. It was always my desire to be the superintendent for the Verona area school district because that's where the fit happened. You know, we get job offers all the time, but the fit was the Verona area school district because of this stance and this willingness to engage with some very tough conversations, but ensure that every student gets the education that they flat out deserve. They deserve the greatness that Verona area schools have. Every student deserves that greatness. And we, as a leadership team and as a board and a community, we're going to ensure that happens. What's also more important about this equity statement that you see in front of you is that it was actually designed when the strategic plan, strategic framework was built. And that was the most significant amount of community input you can imagine across so many stakeholders. So I didn't build this statement. The board didn't build the statement. The community built this statement. And so it is our obligation to uphold this statement because they're the ones that built it. They're the ones that asked for this. And we are required to make sure that we uphold what our community asked for. So moving into next year, to not acknowledge the ramifications of the pandemic and not acknowledge the ramifications of social unrest would not do a service to our community. And we're not going to turn a blind eye to that. We also know that there have to be leadership moves that are grounded in how we are going to move forward as a community together, all of us together. And that means our theme for next year is not just a theme, it's action steps, it's a time of healing. And when you think about time of healing, we're talking about the physical ramifications, the emotional, and societal. We will lead with compassion and empathy in service of our community, knowing that this has hit us all very hard. And it's emotional in a sense because you talk about, I heard our parents talking about being on the other side of Zooms, and they're absolutely right about hearing what's going on, but there was also that emotional toll of things that you heard. You saw teachers doing everything they could to educate while sometimes their own child was right there needing attention and trying to balance both. You saw students that just sometimes wanted to turn their camera off because they just couldn't handle the emotional toll anymore. And it's up to us. They trust us to guide them out of that. And we are going to do that by being compassionate, empathetic, and moving together in unity. Not always agreeing, but we will get to this place of unity if we all trust and believe in one another. So I believe it was one of the parents that spoke, and they were exactly right. Sometimes we can get into initiative overload when we try to accomplish too many things at once. And we are committed to two major priorities this year. That is continuous improvement planning, because there's expectation of our community that we continue to improve. And that means we'll use goal setting, strategies, metrics, and equity-based budgeting to ensure that our students get the acceleration and advance out of this level of the pandemic education that we were in last year. To support that work, we will implement school-based leadership teams that will allow us to strengthen Pillar 4, that will empower staff. It will also allow us to leverage educator knowledge and voice, because we have great veteran and young teachers that have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and we need to leverage their voice in our decision-making. And then one of the things that'll be most important is that it allows us to strengthen our coherence district-wide. In essence, we don't want to be an educational system where your education is built off address. You want to be an educational system where we are coherent and we have the mission and values and belief, and we have instructional strategies that are aligned across our district, because there's best practice and there can only be that best practice. And so every student deserves those best practices in education, and we will strive to be a far more coherent district. So with that, there also means that there has to be a level of partnership and relationship to the Board of Education. I report to them, I report to the board. They will hold me accountable. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They're going to hold me accountable to some very, very high expectations that I have of myself. When you say you're going to be a national model, like, you better, okay, now you better prove it and stop talking about it. So they will hold me accountable. And for that to come to fruition, I'm excited to announce that we're going to do a training together, which is called Coherence Governance Model Training. That'll be supported by an outside organization, the Aspen Institute, where we will go in some very intense full-day trainings over a 5-day period before school begins, where it's not just about the coherence governance model, it's also what we are communicating to you, our community, about what you should expect from our Board of Education in their relationship with me, and what they expect of me to execute back out to the community. But without those clear lines of who's doing what, that's where things get really mired, and transparency appears to be very unclear or doesn't exist. So while it is a huge investment in time, it's the right investment in time to make sure that, again, the accountability measures to me are held, as well as I clearly know my expectations as the superintendent, and the board is able to articulate and communicate to the community the area where they will be making very specific decisions and where they will assign that to me. So with that, I want to invite our members from our academic services team. As part of the presentation today from the academic services team, they'll begin with their why behind the work of the academic services. The what is our curriculum. Each year annually, we make a recommendation to our Board of Education, this is statewide, what curriculum we will use in instructing our students. Like last year and the year before, our curriculum will be clearly aligned to the grade level Wisconsin state standards. And that's what we will ask our board to approve, is that we present curriculum that's aligned to the state standards, and that'll be for board vote next at our next session. But today we can't expect our board to vote on anything without putting a presentation in front of them of what that looks like. And then the how. We'll get into some of the how, but while we have a curriculum in front of us, what are the instructional strategies that we will lean into in service of our students to make sure that they achieve the greatness and the excellence that we expect. So I'll have my two great colleagues introduce themselves and begin with the academic services part of the presentation. During this, you will also hear some components of some of the questions that were asked about. One piece was about the world language, and also a piece about the curriculum or the class and the rationale behind the class. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. So glad to be here. I'm Dr. Hawkins, the Assistant Superintendent of Academic Services, and I am surrounded by great colleagues, families, and students. So we're going to get started. The Academic Services team will support building leaders so that they can continue to align resources, develop goals and strategies that allow them to respond to the specific needs of students and families. We will operationalize the strategic plan and equity framework by starting with our why. Our why is what drives our work. It is the catalyst. It is, as Dr. Clarity says, it's what fuels and helps to create the magic in schools. So when we think about our why fuels our beliefs. And we believe that every student must be successful. We believe that their path to success should be personalized and allow for every student to meet or exceed their academic potential. We believe that schools will engage in cycles of continuous improvement grounded in equity. So the VASD strategic plan serves as the overarching framework that undergirds the work of the academic services team. So when we think about our why, we then have to take that why and put it into action. So we take our beliefs and we then create a theory of action. The academic services teams, if we work to support schools to engage in cycles of continuous improvement, grounded in equity, and provide students with opportunities for personalized learning, then all students will meet or exceed their academic potential. So when we continue to look at what we're going to do, there's a lot of work to do, but we're going to focus on two things. Actually, we're going to focus on a lot of things, but the things that rise to the top of our list are continuing to work to make sure that our students are the center of everything we do. And we're going to do this through personalized learning plans. We're going to continue to deepen our work around continuous improvement, the process and the plans. We're also going to continue to look at data. We're going to ensure that there's coherence. We're going to continue to focus on rigor in our curriculum and our instruction and our assessment. We're also going to create professional learning plans for district coaches. And then, as Dr. Clarity said, we're going to become a national model for excellence grounded in equity. I'm a little behind on my slides. I get really excited when I get started talking about it. I'm going to turn it over to Amy Arbogast. She has done an amazing job working with personalized learning. And so the pandemic, yes, it is something that we all had to live and journey through, but it is also a time that allowed us to do some things that we wouldn't have had an opportunity to do in education. So I'm going to allow her to share, but she's going to take us through a journey and help us understand more about personalized learning.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for having me. Our first topic today is personalized learning, and then Dr. Hawkins will talk about a few more things as well that I'll reference. Oh, wait, I got to advance my screen. There we go. So you'll see that it says personalized learning reboot, because I think last year we heard the words asynchronous, synchronous, concurrent teaching way more than we heard personalized learning. And so we're going to be bringing forth the idea of personalized learning, but it's really about reaffirming, because personalized learning is not just in board policy, it's also in our strategic plan. And so we're going to be talking about how we're going to move forward from what we have learned in the past year with education. So I'm going to start by talking about the beliefs that we have, which is we believe that personalized learning is the equity-based instructional strategy that will allow us to achieve the district vision of every student must be successful. And we believe that every student deserves to be met where they are and supported with their learning through the development of a personalized learning plan. So on the screen, I know it's hard to see, is a reminder of what the Vasd PLP is that was board approved actually back in 2015. And there are 4 components to the personalized learning plan, and that includes profile and goal setting, the path, collection of evidence, and reflection. And we've actually done the profile and goal setting twice. The very first year, we had a software that went out of business on us. So in year 2, we actually kind of had to restart everything and have people enter it again. So we've actually done the profile and goal setting piece twice in 2 different ways. And then part of the way through that year, the pandemic started. Last year, then we had the pandemic, and I'm going to take us back just for a minute for reflection purposes only. I know it was a challenging year, but we'd be remiss if we don't take advantage of some of the things that we learned last year in education. And this year, we're going to really be using those pieces to deepen our work with the path. So first of all, last year, I would call the year of technology. You know, we had no idea what we were going to experience during the pandemic. And I think even we as adults, we used some technologies we never even heard of before in order to do our work. And there was no different here in education in our profession. Teachers were using a lot of systems that they had either used just a little bit or maybe had never even heard of before. One of those systems is our learning management system. We had to have a way to deliver instruction, and we delivered that through our learning management systems of Seesaw and Canvas. So we had a really deep understanding of that. Parents were also very connected to our systems and to our classrooms and learned a lot about what we were doing. We also had teachers expanding their knowledge in lots of technologies like Zoom, which is something that we actually talked about with conferences that people liked a lot. So there are technologies that we can continue to use moving forward. The bottom line is that the high usage of our district approved and supported technologies really has given us a view into what's possible with personalized learning. And it no longer is a hurdle of understanding the technologies and how we can utilize them at their highest potential, that we can use that moving forward into personalized learning. So at a very high level today, I'm sharing with you the pieces that the academic services team are going to be working on this year to deepen our practices with personalized learning. And the very first two have to do with foundational components of the classroom. So the very first one is strengthening our core instruction. When you have core instruction, that's standards, which Angie is going to talk to you about in a minute, and common formative assessments so that students understand what they know and students understand what they don't know. Once you know that, you're able to target instruction, and students then can be given the voice to create their own path to learn what they need to learn from their assessments. Secondly, which Angie will also be talking about, is having a data culture in the district. We're going to be using the continuous improvement plans and the school-based leadership teams and identifying those data sources to measure success. The other two are more what you would think of when you think of personalized learning. You do need a solid foundation, educational practices in order to personalize learning, which is why they're second. Flexible content and tools like what we used in the past year with learning management systems. And we're also talking again about playlists, choice boards, pathways, giving students the ability to make decisions on what works best for them to move their learning forward. And then finally, the student engagement and ownership piece continues working on the PL look-fors, which includes student voice, student choice, purpose, collaboration, and other tools that students use in the classroom for their learning, and working to continue to engage families and connect them to what we're doing in the classroom, because the Vasd PLP should be, the parents are to be involved in developing the PLP with the students. So those are the components that we're going to be working on. And now I'm passing it back to Dr. Hawkins.
So as we think about the path, that's what the learner does. And so that focuses on academics. And so I like to think about it as the 5 E's. We've got equity, excellence, engagement and expectations, and empowerment. And so we're going to take all of that and couple it with the strategic plan, the equity framework, and we're going to align it with the why, our theory of action. This then ties into our academic standards. And so every year under section 120.12 of the Wisconsin state statutes, we are required to notify parents and guardians of the academic standards that are used to guide instruction in the Verona area school district. So here in Verona, we use Common Core standards for English, language arts, and all literacy, K-12. We also use the Common Core standards for math. We then use Next Gen Science, those standards for science, and then we use the Wisconsin Social Studies standards, which were recently adopted in 2018 to guide our work in social studies. As we then think about curriculum and instruction, so many good things have happened in this area. In elementary, we recently brought on new curriculum in reading, the reading units of study, Bridges, which is our new math curriculum, Number Corner, which is what we're using in math. And then this year, we realized that we had a void and needed additional work in the area of phonics for our earliest learners. And so we're adopting and now using phonics units of study. In middle school, K-8, well, excuse me, not K-8, 6-8, we're also using the reading units of study. 2 years ago, the Verona Area School Board approved the review of the World Language Program Study. And this was by the American Council of the Teaching of Foreign Languages. So when we're thinking about what we're doing in curriculum, what our students are learning on the path, we want to be able to offer additional course offerings. And part of this work is a result of this program review that was done by the American Council on Teaching of Foreign Languages. And so this review of our programming gave us specific recommendations around some of our course offerings. And so they also had some very good things to say about what we do with world languages. Recommendations for improvements would suggest that we would look at our courses at 6th grade. And so to address some of the questions that came up about the language course, what we're doing is we're ensuring that students are moving to proficiency with language. So in 6th grade, there was a 6th grade language exploration class. And based on the recommendations of this study, what they found and what they recommended is that learning language in one class that was just an exploration class, students would be better assured proficiency when they learned language over a longer span of time. So in 6th grade, students had 1/4 of language. With this recommendation, we're moving this course or adjusting the course so that students now have an entire semester of language learning, which will ensure not just an exploration of a class, but proficiency and mastery of a language. Students now have an opportunity in 6th grade as an elective to take or select the youth empowerment course and/or other courses that are offered. So that is just one of the recommendations from that study that was brought on about 2 years ago. Also thinking about the work of the academic services team.
Dr. Hawkins, really quick.
Oh.
I wanted to add to the world language component, because when you talk about world language, we want to make sure that our families and community are clear that it's not just about exposure to the world language. Our expectation and your expectation is that we put a system in place where a student actually becomes proficient and has the ability to become proficient in that world language. What the study identified was while there was the move to a for a full semester for 7th grade, that's in addition to 8th grade, where now they can carry that language over to a full year. And now you have the continuity that you actually need to be able to access a world language, as compared to the more truncated version of 1/4 and then a smaller period of time, 7th grade, and not being able to fully access it as an 8th grader, as fully access as an 8th grader. What this allows us for us to engage deeply in world language for a full semester, carry that over to a full year in a world language. And that is what all of our studies and research have shown, and especially the research that Dr. Hawkins is referencing, that is what actually allows you to become proficient in the language as compared to just being exposed to the language.
So the additional work that Dr. Clarity referenced is our continuous improvement work. So all of our schools will create a continuous improvement plan. We had an opportunity to visit Country View today, and they were able to share with us their work around their creation of their continuous improvement plan and their theory of action. So all schools will continue and deepen that work around continuous improvement. And then they will also create a theory of action. So their theory of action is going to articulate specific strategies. They're also going to create goals that are steeped in school data, their data, and then they're going to create professional development plans that teachers will engage in learning that will directly impact student outcomes in the classroom. Lastly, I want to say thank you all for the opportunity to serve. We are committed, the academic services team, to support our leaders, to help create and build our leaders so that we will see improved and continued outcomes for students in our classrooms.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board?
I have a general question. With the personal learning plans, do you ladies have an estimate of roughly how long the development of this plan takes in regards to how much time a parent or guardian or adult learning companion for the child would need to invest and spend in order to develop this with their child?
I'll try that one. So what I consider a PLP is it's the living, breathing work that the students do all day long in their classes. And that's why it's so pivotal that we had the LMS learning that we did last year, because all of that work and all of the things that they do are going to be going into those systems so that they're able to do things like create the path, the evidence, the reflection. I know that in the past, what we've done with families is we have family contact day, and we also have conferences where these are reviewed with the parents. I think the board policy is reviewed once a year, but we've tried to review it several times a year with families. And also families now have access into our systems where they're able to see things, comment on things, and we haven't had as much connection in the past as we do now. So I don't really have a time for you, but I see it as a living, breathing thing now that we have the LMS starting.
Additionally, so you have the PLP, and that is based on student interest. And so a teacher will take the time to work with a family and the child to learn what the student likes, what drives the student, what are the student's passions. And then from there, the teacher takes all that information and he or she will use that to drive what happens in the classroom. So when we think about differentiation, we think about how does a teacher take what a student likes, interest, and takes that and makes learning relevant. How does the teacher pull in articles and create projects that are interest-based, that makes learning come alive for a student? So when we talk about personalized learning, that's what personalized learning is. It's taking what students like, taking their interests, taking all of that, putting it into the classroom and creating lessons, creating assessments that include student voice, student choice, allow students to create and drive their learning. So as she said, it's not a one and done. It's a process that will happen. We take and create a plan, we revisit the plan, students create goals. Research would say that student goal setting is one of the best ways to drive student achievement. When students take a responsibility for their learning, I set a goal, I am innately responsible for my learning along with the teacher who helps to facilitate it. So then it becomes relevant and alive and it makes meaning for me. So it's not something that you can put a time frame on. It is something that we will develop and help our teachers become more masterful and intentional with the work that they're doing in the classroom.
Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Because you just said that last statement. That's what I was going to just try to encapsulate, and you did it right there, is just the recognition in what I'm hearing you all share about how targeted the approach is for next year. And hopefully the staff feel that same targeted intention in terms of how their work days are structured and their meetings and support to make all of that happen. Because I've been on the teacher side of that, and it's hard when you're balancing 18,000 things. And I like what I'm hearing in terms of the focus and the drive to put all of that into practice, because yes, to all the things you shared and the time that the staff will be investing, that is prioritized with your support as well. And just one other piece that I know we've kind of surfaced a bit in a way at previous board meetings, but the curiosity that I have when you shared what is my slide 15, but I think yours may have varied slightly, about surfacing formative assessments and data sources and being open to being creative with that. I know we've talked about that in terms of making budgeting decisions. What are the sources of our data, and are we using data that's really telling us, information we want to know about our students? So I'm excited to see where those pieces grow in terms of data collection.
Other questions?
I just wanted to follow up on your mention of the world language audit. And thank you for kind of recapping that, because that was pre-COVID. So having been on CIA for a while, I'm revisiting what I remember about the world language audit after a lot of other things have occurred. My request as a middle school parent, so having an 8th grader and having had 2 others who are now done with high school, there's been evolution at the middle school level over time. And I think from a parenting perspective, if there's a way to create a visual aid that would just help us as parents, guardians, family members, visualize, again, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade elective evolution, I guess I would call it, because I know it's changed somewhat, obviously, for my older students. And now with my 8th grader, it's changed from even when she was a 6th grader. So some kind of simple visualization would be great, and I think would help clear up some communication. So I really appreciate you going over the world language audit, because having remembered the recommendations, and there were a lot of recommendations that came out of that having a unified semester was a better approach than having these smaller pieces. That again, if we can be reminded of what students have, and again, I have a 2A immersion student, so it's also complicated by that, because I know the TWE students at middle school, their elective pathways through 6th, 7th, and 8th look different than a monolingual student. So if there's something like that in the works, I thank you, because it's hard for me and others parents really to remember what that looks like sometimes.
I wanted to just add a comment, and then also just a clarification. First, the comment. I mean, my first bit of volunteer involvement in the district was on the personalized learning committee many years ago. And I was very skeptical then about it. And I really like where it's going now, kind of moving beyond the goal setting and really the hiccup we had with whatever it was, the company that went out of business.
Epiphany.
Yeah, kind of left us high and dry for a year there. Not a fun memory. But I really like where this is going. I really like how this is kind of a total approach. I can see how this can be incorporated into conferencing and things in a way that hopefully saves teachers time instead of just adds, coming up with smart goals to it, which I know is something that happened a lot in the beginning before the company went out of business. So I really like where this is going. I would be interested as you guys move forward with this to hear about how you're balancing the need for personalized learning with kind of the mandate to use data, and particularly the tendency towards using data in a standardized way, because there's a tension between standardized data and personalized experiences that a good personalization plan in an accountable way has to kind of bridge that juxtaposition. So I'd really be interested in hearing how you guys think about that. Not tonight, obviously, but that's kind of an overarching going forward. But I really like how you're starting to think about it, how you're laying it out there. This is great. This is something I'm really, really excited about. So that's great. And then also a clarification, because I'm not sure I understood along the same lines with wanting to understand how middle school electives get communicated out. So these classes, the world languages, which I've always struggled with the name world languages, because they're all European languages. So that's just my little 2 cents right there. But how those classes are, they're all electives. And what I hear you saying is this other class that's come up in comments that we're referencing today too, and I forgot the name of it because my memory is not that great. Those are all electives. We're talking about the electives, not the core classes, the encore classes.
These are on, right.
So these are all electives or optional classes.
students get to choose. So there are core classes that students have to take, like math, social studies, those kind of things. So then you would have chosen whether you're going to take the exploration class or band or this on the what was then known as the wheel. And so students, I see a light bulb going on.
Vague memories.
And so students selected their courses or they made their course selection before school ended. And so now, I'll stop.
Yeah, they're all kind of electives.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But I agree, some sort of visualization for us.
We can do that.
Poor memory folks. Thank you very much. I really like the personalized learning thing. I'm jazzed about that.
I do have a quick question, and I stepped out to use the restroom. So if you answered it, I'm so sorry. But my question is, I love all of this, particularly with my focus area being project design and inquiry-based learning. I think that this is great. The question that I have is, as we are shifting or rebooting, for lack of better words, how do we ensure that our teachers have capacity to do this? I think it's great, but I just want to be sure that we are setting realistic expectations of our teachers as they are, determining what our kids want to do, what they're interested in, what they need to teach as it relates to the standards that they have to adhere to. So how are we ensuring that we're building that capacity and being aware of all of the changes they're going to have as we reboot this way?
Absolutely. We certainly want to keep in mind initiative fatigue, and make sure that our teachers, that our principals are listening to the needs of our teachers. But when we'll look at our data, and then we will then develop a professional development plan that is structured so that we're looking at where students and teachers, what they need, and build it so that it allows for teachers to learn, teachers to apply, teachers to revisit, teachers to receive feedback. So important for teachers to have critical feedback. And so we're working with our coaches so that we're giving them what they need, the tools that they need so that they can provide the feedback to the teachers so that the teachers can continue to learn and grow. So to answer your question, how are we going to do this? One, we're going to listen to the teachers and we're going to build plans that are based on best practices for adult learning.
Okay. Thank you. Wait, I might have a follow-up. So will each teacher's kind of plan be different then, or are you kind of?
No, so each teacher's plan wouldn't be different.
Okay.
So when we build our continuous improvement plan, there would be a professional development plan that will be embedded in that plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, thoughts?
So I just want to make sure there's no questions first.
I think we're good for now.
All right. I still want to make sure, based off some of the comments, that we're very clear about what the youth or the student empowerment class is not. The youth empowerment class is not any way an attempt for adults to put their political values onto students. A youth empowerment class is exactly as the title states, is actually a student asks for course that allows students to have a space for them to dialogue and advocate for things that they need and want, and as they continue to mature and grow. And just be very frank, our children, and my child will be here too in September, are going into the most diverse global society in history. That is a fact. It is our ultimate responsibility to make sure that we produce a Verona Area School District graduate that is able to navigate and thrive in the most diverse global society in history. That is what we are working to do. And that's what our students have asked for, a space or a place in the form of courses that allows for that to happen. if and when, or not if and when, it better not. We should not have a politicized version or politicized outcomes as far as you have to believe this or you have to believe these thoughts. That is not what these courses are designed. They are for students. They are for students to have a space to dialogue together. They are a space for students to have those conversations together with their peers, because these are the same peers that they're going to go into high school with. They're the same peers that they're going to go into our diverse society with. They're the same peers that are going to experience the greatness of Bronier School District, and they should have a space to do that together. And so I know we will be held accountable for that. I know you'll hold us accountable for that, but I don't think we clearly said what it is not, and it should not be a political place for an adult to instill their political thoughts onto a child.
Dr. Clardy, could I ask a follow-up question to
Sure.
that? I think the statement that you made resonates quite heavily with all of us. And for anyone instructing this class, clearly it's kind of a new and necessary space to navigate.
Correct.
Can you speak to any special training that will be provided to those instructing this class to make sure that the teacher or instructor is able to navigate these really sensitive but extremely important commentary that's happening?
Yeah. So when I talked about making sure that we have at the building level and at the office level a professional learning, professional development support, that is a piece of it, because these conversations, our students may seek advocacy in a space that's outside of their class too. So it's not, I don't think we'd be doing this ourselves justice if we only said we train for that class. We're training and as part of our professional development for tough conversations to happen, and to make sure that student voice is uplifted and resonated without being interfered with, but here are my beliefs. That's not what we're trying to do. And so, yes, it does take a significant amount of professional development. I'm confident in our professional development team. It is a priority for us to make sure that, but I didn't want to leave the space that is training just for that class.
Sure.
It's training as part of our professional development system.
Gotcha.
Dr. Clardy, one point that I wanted just to clarify. The board is involved, and I'm going to reiterate, the board is involved in approving our curriculum standards, but we aren't involved in improving specific courses, and we never have been. That wouldn't be our role as board members. We're not the professionals. That's why we trust our professionals. But we have established, as we've talked about, our strategic plan, and we have clear directives through that. And I think the courses that are ultimately brought forward to our students are in alignment with our directive through the strategic plan. One of the things that I think is important is that we really, developing critical thinkers is one of a key goal
Correct.
of us as an educational institution. I mean, our students have to leave our district with skills to think critically, which would go completely in the face of you must think this. So
Sure.
I think that is the reassurance that our goal is to develop critical thinkers. And that means that they're going to have to challenge and push back. And there's certainly not a predetermined outcome of thought. And I can also say anything you tell a child to think, they will think the opposite anyway. So that's maybe just mine. But I think this gives a space to help develop those critical thinking skills that we have seen time and time again raised up as a request of our students and our parents.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Clardy, I also want to thank you for underscoring the importance of preparing students to enter a very diverse global society. And as a parent of a student who is in the inaugural class for the two-way immersion program, I just want to say that a lot of things came out of the world language audit, and they were all recommendations for how to strengthen and continue the district's direction in creating strong bilingualism or biliterate students. So I think I'm just proud of this district's progress in the seal of biliteracy. I know we didn't have what we normally would have to honor those students this year because of COVID, but I see the recommendations from the World Language Audit only strengthening what the work we are doing to have more and more students eventually reach that high level of proficiency in multiple languages. So I just want to assure people that I having seen the results of that audit, really feel we are moving toward creating higher levels of proficiency in multiple languages, and we'll continue to do that. And I look forward to when we can again honor the candidates who go through the seal of biliteracy, because it's a very high level of proficiency, and it's we're hoping to continue to grow the number of students who receive that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right. Thank you both very much.
While we're transitioning, I'm proud to be able to bring 2 members of our student services team to the stage for a quick transition, and maybe everybody can stand up and stretch your legs for a minute while they come to the stage. So I'm also into wellness, so take care of each other. So I think you can get out of the hallway because if you're in the main area, it's right there. Sure. It's cracking. All right, I'm proud to turn the mic over to our 2 great members of our student services team, and I'll let you do introductions and your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Clarity, and to the board and to the public that's here. We really appreciate it. So my name is Dr. Emma Durchie. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. And this is Tracy Williams, and she's been introduced earlier, and Sarah Halbert back there. And I'll mention her again because they are 2 of really important leaders within the division or work within student services. And just a little bit, because I know there's new board members here too. Student services includes the work of special education, students with disabilities who have IEPs as well as 504 plans. It also involves our work across the district with school psychologists, counselors, social workers, mental health supports, mental health coordination, nurses, health assistants. We also oversee registration, open enrollment, tuition waivers, and a few other things. So it's an exciting area in the district. It really touches all buildings, all work within every building and the community. And thinking about what's happened within the world and the community with COVID the last year and a half, there's been a lot of different pieces that we've been able to engage in. And so we would like to take a few minutes to kind of bridge from the work that's been shared just recently, which we really appreciate around the academic work, and pulling it back a little bit to some of the social, emotional, and physical needs of our students and families and how we can address those. And in some ways, might be in reverse, right? And we'll get to that in a second. So let's see, do I get to control these slides here? Look at that. So. Wow, power. So we're going to start with a couple slides to kind of ground us and ground the work and what we're going to be sharing, because ultimately in a couple of minutes, we'll share a few things that are strategies to help support our students, families, and our staff in preparing for this coming fall, physically, social, emotionally, societally, in order to prepare themselves to achieve academically, which is what we just talked about. So this slide brings us back to the theme for the year. The district theme is a time of healing, physical, emotional, societal. We need to focus on our physical bodies, our mental health, our social health. We're excited to bring kids back and see them face to face and to prepare them for a fall where we hopefully see all of our students, or most all of our students, back face to face with each other. The next slide, and I just back down right here. I want to also ground us briefly in something that many of us might have read about or learned about in school, in high school, perhaps middle school even, or in college, which is the hierarchy of needs from Maslow. So this is a psychologist from back in the 1940s, and he developed a hierarchy of needs. The reason why I put this slide on here is to remind us of those basic human needs that each of our students, each of our parents, each of our staff members has. These basic needs for physiological health and needs being met, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, in order to get to that place of self-actualization, or some people call it growth mindset now, that kind of ongoing learning and being a positive, successful member of society. Maslow understood that those basic needs had to be met in order to get to higher levels of success. The next slide is just to ground us back, and it's mentioned several times already this meeting, but ground us back to that strategic plan the board put together a couple of years ago. Each of those pillars, those 5 pillars, also are addressed in the work that we've been doing around COVID and social emotional needs. We're thinking about those authentic relationships, safe, inclusive learning environments, high expectations for students, that rigor that we need, supporting and empowering our staff, which is critical because that's what Dr. Clarity said, that's where the magic happens, in those classrooms with strong teachers educating our students, and equitable allocation resources, which has also been mentioned. And I have to do a little shout out to the board. I think all of those in some way or other have already been mentioned tonight. So that's very exciting to keep coming back to those pillars. So I just want to make sure that we are thinking through that. And then we're going to connect those to our why, our beliefs, and our theory of action. Tracy will take it for a minute.
Good evening. Good evening. And so as we work through it with the Student Services Department, we want to talk about what our why is. And our why is we believe that every student has a right to have access to basic needs such as food, shelter, financial security, transportation, and mental health services, and that these are critical to improve overall wellness, academic success, and post-secondary outcomes. And so our why is what pushes us, and then we come up with a theory of action. So this is our why. And so if we do these certain things, then this is the result. So our theory of action is if we work collaboratively as a district and community to implement healing strategies and ensure all basic needs are met, then students, families, and staff will have the tools necessary to heal physically, emotionally, societally, and accelerate student academic growth.
Thanks, Tracy. You'll hear that language more and more throughout the year. So just a reminder that why, our beliefs, should be what roots our whole work. And the theory of action is really taking those beliefs into action. So what are some of the things that we will be doing? Oh boy, these slides are so blurry, so I apologize for that. So we have a lot of things on the slide. We're only going to address a few that directly link or most clearly link to the work that's coming out of COVID response. So we've added a number of staff positions to help support our schools. We've added nurses during COVID, and some of those will continue on. We've also added health assistants. They have been pivotal in our work, instrumental in contact tracing, supporting families, immunizations, and so forth. We've also added some social work allocation, which has also been critical in helping support families as housing issues have come up, and also in a variety of other supportive functions, as well as connecting them to outside services for mental health, as well as physical health needs in the community. And a shout out to our district nutrition office too, for all the work they've done throughout COVID.
Also in the social emotional wellness, with the COVID and being at home, we missed out on really laying eyes on students and being able to really build those authentic relationships. So we were optimistic and excited about the incoming school year where we can continue to foster those relationships and build those relationships with trusted adults in the building. And we want to have eyes on students, have them with us so we can see them, talk with them, just build those rapport, that relationship. Another thing we'll be taking on this year is CBITS. It's now called REST. And that is a trauma-informed survey that we'll be doing for 6th grade and 9th grade students. And it allows us to, it's a screener that allows us to look at students that have experienced trauma. And from that, we'd be able to work with them individually to build some supports and strategies to support them through that.
Another area that we've are adding going into the fall is, many of you have heard of Building Bridges. It's a partnership we've had for a number of years through the county as well as through Catholic Charities. We are adding some staffing to that as well through that partnership. And the county is now allowing us to go into 9th grade. So that previously was a pre-K-8 program. And now we'll be adding 9th as needed. In a nutshell, that is a service that allows, or with a purpose to help connect students with mental health services outside the school system, those that need practitioners and therapists to support them individually and as families. It's been a phenomenal program for a number of years, and I've worked really hard with them to allow us to expand it, actually, because it's a little bit of a tricky proposition. So we're super excited about that. We've added some psychologists and counseling hours as well in other positions. That will be, again, all of those additions are helping support in schools, students, staff, families, and making those connections. I believe I've mentioned to the board also that we were granted a $450,000 grant through the county that we applied for to help with our mental health services. That would include things such as trauma-informed professional development, supports for students experiencing trauma, a fair amount of money to meet basic needs, like we talked about housing assistance, utility assistance, transportation assistance for families, as well as funds for supports in classrooms for services or materials for like sensory materials, as well as mindfulness practices. There are a number of schools that have been pushing into that, and we wanted to make sure that that was supported. And then finally, we are going to the second year of our grant with UW Health. It's a 5-year grant that will help support high school specifically. And so during the last year, we've had a number of students who received outside clinical mental health services that was at no cost to them through this grant. That will continue. What will be different this next year is we'll actually have a staff member, a clinician in the high school helping support that work, where before it was referred out. So that's another addition. And then finally, it's not on this list, but I wanted to add that we recognize that staff need support too. Goes without saying. Many of you know about VFIT and other programs that we've used within the district to help support staff, but we've also done some training around compassion and resilience, which will be ongoing. And we're gonna actually do more of that this coming year. We did a little bit of that last year, and work around mindfulness that isn't just for students, but also the mindfulness work that goes to the adults specifically. So we appreciate those in the board, actually even tonight, that mentioned staff and the needs. I didn't want that to go without being said, but that is definitely something that's a focus of ours. And we understand the toll that all of this has taken on all of us, not just our students. And in order for that work to happen at a high level within the buildings and the classrooms, we need to support our staff. So anything else you want to add? So those are kind of some high level. There are other things on the slide. You have access to all the slides for other pieces that we didn't bring up at this time. Any questions or what questions you have for us?
Just really quick before there are questions. First, thank you for a great presentation. I want both the audience and the board to really understand our intentionality in supporting for social, emotional, and mental health. We know going into or coming out of the pandemic, we have to be very intentional in making sure that we are proactive in that approach and not wait for a responsive and be in a responsive nature. And that means both staffing and also means resources. We talk about equity-based budgeting. We know that mental health looms right now. We know that it's a serious concern. In essence, we've all experienced some type of mental trauma, and we can't say that we haven't. This has been trying times. So I definitely appreciate the acknowledgement of our staff that this is not only student-based support, but it's also staff and family-based support, knowing how important that is. So while there are a multitude of services that we are providing through our student services department, I really wanted him and his team to focus on what looks new coming out of COVID, because just to say the status quo is not good enough, and VSD deserves better than that. And so thank you for uplifting the new strategies and the intentionality, and we look forward to some tremendous outcomes for all of our students and families.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
I just wanted to say I appreciate the why and then your degree of action. I think when we had the schools closed last fall and we realized what a huge hole that created for so many families across all aspects of our society, just it's not just an academic place. We fill so many needs through our district services. And so looking at the mental health needs, we can't educate our students if they're not first mentally, and physically healthy. And again, seeing how many things were missing for our kids without a building to come to really highlighted the critical nature of our schools and our teachers and our staff for our students. So I appreciate that we're really investing in this, because those needs have now multiplied over this difficult time. And I think we are being very intentional, and I appreciate the intentionality in the work that you've put through.
You're welcome. I think we learned a lot through the pandemic and are continuing to learn. And one thing is we had a big focus on authentic relationships. We often talked about authentic relationships. We've learned it's very difficult to build authentic relationships when you don't actually don't get to breathe the same air as each other. For lack of a strange metaphor during the COVID, but I do believe that is critical. And it's hard for us to assess student needs. It's hard for us to support each other. It's hard for us to give a kind, authentic word or just a look, without actually seeing kids and staff. So we're super excited, as everybody is, to reground in the most essential pieces of our work.
I'd just like to share that just in my own professional journey as an educator, I've often felt that some of the work that we've talked about and perhaps implemented around social emotional supports has sometimes felt like a sidecar. And one gratitude I know I have out of the year that we've all experienced is I hope that is no longer the case moving forward. I hope some of the green highlighted things become just how we do things now, recognizing that social emotional work that we do for staff and what staff do with their students isn't just cute and fun and geez, we should just dismiss that to the side for the academics. It doesn't happen. The academics does not happen without it. And I just so appreciate what we've been able to and what you all are doing given the circumstance we're in. But I do really hope that this becomes a new direction and that the community embraces this as well, just what this work means for students and staff in our district.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment as well. And I think just to build on that, some of the things that are mentioned in the why are things that are external factors. They're not things that can be controlled in our schools and our classrooms, but our schools are leading the way nonetheless to ensure that that we're working to ensure all of our students' needs are met. But again, I won't miss an opportunity to highlight the fact that things outside of our schools do affect our students. So decisions made at the city council level, at the county level, at the state level are critical to our student success. And so that's something that we all should keep in mind, not just as a board and an administration, but as a community as well, to make sure that we're building partnerships and we're holding all entities, not just governmental entities, but businesses, hospitals, accountable for our investment in our youth. And that is more and more critical every day, and certainly is something that a light was shown on during the pandemic. So I appreciate the recognition that this is again the proverb that we all know, that it takes a village to raise a child. I appreciate recognizing that in the why. So thank you.
I just want to add a comment as well. I think over the pandemic, one of the things I, tried to talk about in hopeful terms, as I was working so hard to lose to Kellyanna and Jen in the actual election, second time that I lost to Kellyanna, was what can we learn from the pandemic and what can we make our schools better with coming out of this? And I think you guys have hit on a lot of really good stuff. I'm really, really excited to see this work. And going forward, though, I think to echo some of Jen's comments, I'll be excited to see how this interfaces with student services, with the presentations that they were giving. Because one of my concerns is that social and emotional learning is a sidecar, but often carves out its own space in our classrooms. And it really has to kind of permeate everything that we do, so that it's not just another thing out there. But yeah, this is really, really good. And I like your bow tie.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I have some I can lend to you. If you like.
I can't time anymore. I used to know.
I'll help you time. So thank you for that comment. I really appreciate that, because I do feel like it's not just within education, right? I think we as adults need to be good models of how it is to integrate our own social emotional wellness throughout our lives. We model that for our kids, we model that for our neighbors, for coaches, we model it for our teams. So that would be my challenge to all of us.
Yeah.
That we continue to model that and work on it. Each of us needs to work on it. So appreciate that comment.
Other questions, comments?
No, I'll make one comment. I think one of the silver linings of having gone through this tough year, tough pandemic, is the extra resources we have now in nursing and recognition of mental health. And as a board member, I think when I first came on the board, sometimes it was hard to assess, do we really have enough nursing staff? And just from my own children's experiences, from seeing buildings with nurses that seemed really short, just spread thin. And so if there's a silver lining for me, I feel like that additional level of resource that we have now is really a good thing for our students. And I hope I can see that continue post-pandemic as something that's a benefit that's come out of the pandemic that continues to help our students for years to come. And the recognition that mental health, it's always been an issue, but I think now that we're more aware of it, to really just highlight how important that is for our students and families. So.
Thank you for that comment. And I would just, if the nurses were here, this is what they'd say. So I'm going to say it on their behalf, which is that parity between physical and mental health, right? So they really see that front lines in their offices in our schools. They're not just fixing scraped knees and taking temperatures, and they're also very supportive of students and families, helping them connect to mental health services in the community. It's a tricky navigation system out there, and so the addition of school nurses helps both physical and mental health, and they really see that front lines. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying really hard to sit still, but this is something I'm admittedly really passionate about. If I could just piggyback off of something you shared, Dr. Clarity, about creating graduates that can thrive and excel in a diverse society. I think a big piece of that is to be socially and emotionally competent. So if that's a learning outcome for all of our graduates, is emotional competencies and understanding how all of this works, because as adults, I feel like we're catching up to hopefully what our kids will be just masters at in terms of understanding and communicating around their social and emotional needs in a really safe and outward way. I'm excited about just that for our kids versus how maybe some of us as adults have struggled navigating all of that. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you both very much.
So for me, that concludes, and I apologize for my personal I shouldn't have done a 2-hour superintendent's report. But I really wanted to get the information, and I knew there were some questions from our community that rightfully even needed to be able to address, while making sure that the community understood our vision and purpose for both our academic and social emotional work moving forward.
Absolutely. I sincerely appreciate the presentations and think they have been really illuminating. So, and we'll likely end before 8 p.m. anyways, which is, it's a good trend that we have going here. So All right. We can move to review of future agenda items. Our next meeting is July 26th. And then on the 30th and the 31st, we have our trainings. Any questions or comments from the board on the future agenda items or meeting dates?
The 26th is my birthday, so can we keep that one short too? Just kidding.
We'll do our best.
Right.
I think we can try and honor that one.
Or treats.
Or
Do adults bring treats to meetings
Absolutely.
anymore? Okay. Noted.
I think that's recommended.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
I just would comment on the correlation between trying to improve transparency and accountability and doing this work in a lot of these meetings. That this is something that we recognize and want to be better at. And these coherence governance meetings are specifically designed not just to help improve transparency, but just communication and accountability as well. And how much I appreciate Dr. Clarity's efforts in bringing that group in, but also the time that we're going to spend to do that. Because I think it really is important. Yeah. So
absolutely. Yep. And there is a unified commitment to that. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Any other questions or comments?
No, I'm glad John brought that up. I think that's a huge point, and I really think that that will help the board serve our students in a much better way. We have clear lines of communication, clear expectations, and that will be then translated into better outcomes for our students and clear communication to our communities. I'm very pleased, and I appreciate, again, Dr. Clarity taking the initiative to bring this critical work to the board immediately. I think it's much needed and will be hugely helpful.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we can move on to committee reports. CIA.
Has not met.
Finance, BG&T.
I guess that's me, huh? We have not met either.
Okay, thank you. Personnel and policy.
We have not met.
Okay, and with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion from Meredith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Jen. Any last questions or comments before we vote?
I just wanted to add one last comment. In my excitement of this amazing opportunity, I forgot to also thank Amy Almond. I did just want to share a quick funny story. As I was going door to door asking people for signatures, I had no fewer than 4 people start to sign my paper and then pull their pen back and ask me if I was running against Amy Almond, to which I then said no. And they said, okay, now I'll sign your paper. So I did just want to appreciate and thank her for all of her service, because she is not only amazing, but that is seen by her community and her peers. So just wanted to add that in. Thanks.
Nicole, thank you. I think this has been such a hectic meeting. I mean, it's Dr. Clarity's first meeting. We have a board appointment, and I think Amy, really, we deserve to have a recognition of the huge amount of time. Amy has been just, for people who do not know the amount of work that goes into what Amy has done, it is massive. She has put in an extraordinary amount of time and work for the district, for your children, to the community, for your children, for years and years and years. And this is, we absolutely, I think, need to carve out some time at a future meeting, because she deserves to be recognized and applauded. And her dedication to this district has just left me absolutely grateful, because my child has been part of this district, astounded at her dedication. And just, she's one that I will forever appreciate turning to, because she is such a voice of reason and compassion, and brings such a heart to her work at the board table. And so she will be missed. Nicole, we welcome you to, you have big shoes to fill. Big shoes to fill. But Amy deserves to have some time carved out so we can recognize her appropriately. And this has been pretty crazy first meeting.
Meredith, I'm going to add to what you said. So my appreciation from Amy is so deep. And when I think about her years on the board, I think of our children, because my daughter, your son, and Amy Almond's daughter all graduated together. And I said to Amy, wait a minute, you've been on the board almost your daughter's entire life. which is absolutely true because having an 18-year-old, I think maybe there were only 2 years of her daughter's life that she was not on the board when her daughter was a baby and toddler. So I am immensely grateful to her and just in awe that someone steps up, and you too, Nicole, with such young children, because I do remember saying when people asked, would you run for school board? No, my kids aren't old enough yet. I need to wait a little bit longer. It's too hard to have 3 really young children and be on a school board. And Amy stepped up at a time when she had quite a young, I mean, her youngest was quite young. So thank you so much to Amy. And yeah, I hope we can honor her at a future event or meeting time.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your comments and certainly couldn't agree more. So any other last comments or questions before we vote? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.